Hello and welcome back to Simple Times Studios, where we read adventures in single-player role-playing games for your entertainment. Once again, if you like what you hear, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. It helps with the algorithm. We will be continuing with Lukas Rustbelt's story today. The finale, actually, for now. And without further ado, let's begin. Chapter 4. Ura Kavav Barak. The very name sent shivers down Lukas Rustbelt's dwarven spine. He wouldn't let it show in his face, but what little the archives had on the sector worried him. The maps were incomplete if they existed at all. The reports on the sector promised immense mineral wealth, but also spoke about anomalies that weren't elaborated on and made multiple references to artifacts that sounded suspiciously occult in nature. And according to timestamps on various logs, it was also the last sector Broker and Longneck was exploring before House Grandrock began to decline. It wasn't hard to see that whatever they found here might have led to that decline. But if Lukas wanted to secure a foothold in the Long Belt and put an end to the madness, it was also where he needed to go. So after resupplying and checking the schedule for the recently reactivated automated shuttle network, he boarded the first shuttle for Ura Kavav Barak and hoped the rumors weren't true. Once again, rolling for our starting location and main event. Okay. Lukas stepped off the shuttle at the sector dock just as someone stepped into the shuttle dock atrium at the other end of the room. Wearing a full beard and his hair long, Lukas didn't recognize him at first. But once he saw the worn shoulder patch with a Rustbelt crest on the stranger's jumpsuit, he knew who it was. There was only one person it could be, but how? They always warned me that the temporal anomalies in this sector would catch up with me sooner or later, the older Lukas Rustbelt mused as he rubbed his beard with grease-stained fingers. How? How many years? The present Lukas asked incredulously. Just how? Quite a few, but don't worry, they'll be fun. Most of them, at any rate. Future Lukas smiled warmly. Was it the younger Lukas's imagination, or was his older self starting to fade? What? Do I reclaim the Long Belt in the name of House Rustbelt? Do I restore honor to the hold? What about Janella T-Surge? He asked quickly before the opportunity slipped through his fingers. Future Lukas noticed he was starting to fade. Looks like the timelines are correcting themselves. Just as well. You know I can't answer any questions about the future. Temporal paradoxes and all that. And as for Janelle, seriously? You don't need me to tell you how to handle Dumpling. Stop fiddling around and get the girl something nice, the temporal doppelganger replied before completely disappearing without a trace. By himself again, the present Lukas shook his head and continued onward into the mines of Ura Kavav Barak. Despite the strangeness of the encounter, he found the ordeal of meeting his future self to be strangely reassuring. Okay. Next location die. Stepping through the airlock door and into a long tunnel leading deeper into the asteroid, a deep rumbling echoed from somewhere beneath Lukas's feet. Rocks vibrated and rolled. It felt like the very ceiling was going to collapse on him. Breaking out into a full run, he tried to get out of the tunnel before something fell on him. Okay, question Oracle. Does Lukas get hurt trying to escape the tunnel? Cosmetic collapse. I say it's very likely, so... Okay, no, and... Okay, probably the wrong Oracle to ask, but the same effect. Diving into a roll, Lukas rolled out of the collapsing tunnel as a puff of rock dust blew out behind him in his turret. Rising to his feet, he looked back and saw the collapse wasn't as bad as it first seemed. With a little work, he could get it cleared and set up some decent supports, but that wasn't quite as important as where he was now. Rising to his feet and looking around, Lukas found himself staring at the massive skull of a long-dead star dragon. its flesh long since crumbled into dust by the elements. The alloy bones and golden crystal eyes were all that remained of this magnificent creature. Resting in the middle of a massive cavern, the skeleton was curled up around a single large golden egg. Okay, loot die time. Okay. Stepping forward as he looked at the golden egg, Lukas noticed a massive crack and the remains of a yolk pooled around the remains of the egg. While a depressing reminder that even dragons could be horribly fragile creatures at times, the egg's shell was still actual gold and would sell for a fair price once he brought it back to the settlement. Putting the egg shell in his backpack, he continued looking down a promising tunnel leading from the dragon's nest. There would be time to search for more loot later. Walking along the tunnel, Lukas nearly tripped when his boot brushed up against an abandoned assault rifle. Looking down at the tunnel floor, he found a mess of armor and weapons just casually tossed on the floor. Walking a little more carefully, he stepped up to an abandoned chest plate and picked it up. Oh, glorious question, Oracle. Does this armor belong to the bounty hunters Lukas is chasing? I give it a 50-50 odds, so... Yes, and... Staring right at him was the insignia of the Bladed Chains Guild on the armor's paldron, and looking back down, he spotted the armor's wrist computer. This suit belonged to the same leader that addressed Lukas a couple weeks ago with that rubbish lie about Iron Pick being a wanted murderer. Picking up the wrist computer and turning it on, he started to try and crack the computer's security. The wrist computer beeped angrily at him, displaying a message that he had exceeded the maximum number of tries and would have to wait an hour before he could try again. Shrugging, he put the computer in his backpack and kept walking. What happened to make an entire team of bounty hunters abandon their gear and vanish without a trace? Okay. Leaving the tunnel behind him, Lukas stepped into a cave that felt like it had more in common with a hive of burrowing insects than a cave formed by natural erosion. Tunnels branched off in every which way, going in every direction, and no sign which way was the right way to progress deeper into mines. Who are you? A sound that Lukas could barely hear, much less tell it was a whisper. Looking from the left to the right, then over his shoulder, the dwarven sinker did not respond, but tightened his grip on his gigantic wrench as he walked along down a tunnel that looked somewhat promising. He couldn't figure out where it was coming from. It seemed to be coming from everywhere all at once. What do you want? Now he could hear the sound of something that sounded like language, but it was still too soft to make out if it was a language he recognized. Who's there? He asked back, still continuing to walk along the same winding, narrow tunnel. Whoever the voice was, they declined to answer. I can see you. I can smell you. The whispering returned, its tone becoming much more malicious. Lukas still couldn't hear the words, but made out the shift in tone, motioning for his combat drone to set up a firing position slightly behind him. He continued to look in each direction. Nothing to be seen. Wait. A flicker of movement out of the corner of his eye. Yes, right there. I will taste you. The whispering continued, now definitely behind him. Lukas could just barely make out the words now. Yes, about that. Lukas replied with a wry smirk as Dumpling turned and fired her guns where he willed her. Okay. Rolling on a dexterity roll to trick shot the creature of this cave with my turret. Okay, I succeed, but there's a minor complication. I'm just going to say I take a hit for my trouble. Claws raked along Lukas's back as he turned to face his foe, the creature howling as Dumpling dumped a burst of high explosive rounds into the entity stalking the sinker. Rustbelt caught a glimpse of an impossibly tall, spindly humanoid with a face that looked like a particularly creepy child's drawing. Was it a demon? Was it some other creature? Whatever it wasn't immune to bullets. As the creature fell over dead, Lukas moved on. Okay. Walking down the tunnel for what felt like ages, Lucas noticed the tunnel started to become more rectangular and artificially shaped until suddenly it opened to a dark room. Feeling the wall for a switch, he flipped it and the lights slowly flickered to life on a small storage room. Looks like Grandrock set up a cache of mining supplies in this room. Not the ending to this expedition he was looking for, but definitely a good one. The coal breakers would have to be a problem for another day, he decided as he searched the room to see what he could find. From the wrecked equipment, Lucas managed to salvage a box of mechanical components. The colony always needed more spare parts, and at least he wouldn't have to leave this accursed place empty-handed. The settlement awaited. End of campaign. This is where we'll leave Lucas's story for now. Someday I might return to it, but for now, this seems like as good of a place as any to end. Thank you, I hope you enjoy, and see you again in our next adventure.